Hi, Donovan here from the Generative Edge. I'm joined with my amazing co-host, Vyas.
Hey.
We've got Martin Zahumensky, the CTO of Ataccama. I'm going to get you to introduce yourself in a moment, but we are here together today at the AWS Cloud Day in Prague. It is buzzing, 2,700 participants, a huge uplift on last year. So we're super excited to walk the floor a little bit. Coffees have been had, croissants have been had, so it's going to be an amazing day. And I've just walked past some of the booths today. Really exciting stuff happening out here. So yes, good to have you with us again in Prague.
Excited as always, and even more excited, Martin, to have a wonderful conversation with you today.
Thank you, guys.
Martin, so we are super pumped to have you with us. Martin is the CTO of a company called Ataccama, which are data quality leaders in this space. So we're going to be talking a bit about governance, trust, and we're really, really excited to have you here. Thank you for making the time, for being here today. Martin, can you introduce yourself briefly? Tell us a bit about what you do with Ataccama, please.
So I'm Chief Technology Officer of Ataccama. So I'm basically responsible for technology innovation and making sure we produce products which our customers love. So a lot balancing between like where we should be heading versus what we need to be delivering now. Like that's my role in the company, creating teams which can perform and deliver exceptional products. And Ataccama, as such, we are a data management company. So we basically help our customers to manage and work with the data better. Like one of the things we are focusing on is data trust. So what that means is that most of our customers, and like I think like most companies in general, like people are saying I'm not trusting the data, and like there are tons of reasons for not trusting the data. So like some of the reasons are like, am I looking on the right report? Like, was this information up to date? Like, how was this calculated actually? Like, is this really ARR? Like, how was that defined? So it's basically like a bunch of things you need to be able to do to lift this trust in the data within the organization. So that's what we're focusing on. So basically anything which is helping our clients to have better trust in the data and operate more efficiently, that's what Ataccama does essentially.
And you do an incredible job at it. Gartner right-hand quadrant leaders in this space. We're gonna pick Martin's brain a little bit today. Yeah, we're gonna talk about what it looks like for their clients, but also what it looks like for you as a CTO, leading a sizable team of engineers. And we always get the offline scoop just before we go live with these podcasts. So it's really an exciting story that you have to tell, Martin. But you mentioned data trust. You mentioned a couple of concepts there. But in practice, we see a lot of clients wanting to advance on the AI fronts, wanting to move into agents more and more. Agentic is even in discussion now about how do you make these agents all talk together. And we've seen in over a year now of, I think, 33 episodes of podcasting that this is not such an easy journey. And a lot of clients spend a lot of time experimenting and yield very little measurable impact, which I think we're starting to see now in this area. But core to that discussion seems to be the consolidation of data, normalization of data, trusting that data. And I think, Martin, you mentioned offline that 85% of clients' data is unstructured of nature these days. So clients are now wanting to query pictures, video content, and all sorts of stuff. Maybe you could just walk us through, for your typical customer base, and I know that's large because you're serving the global space. What are some of the signals? What are some of the expectations your customers are having of you as a product provider in this space, given the fact that they want to advance and move on with AI in their organizations?
Yeah, so you covered part of it. So like what we have seen like a couple of years ago, a year ago, was basically all the clients were trying to like jump on the AI wave, like trying to figure out like what we can do. So a lot of experimentations, like when you do experiments and like kind of proof of concept, it doesn't really matter. Like you put team on it, they figure out like how to get the data inside. But now I think they are switching to kind of a like stage where they are thinking, how can we scale this and how can we make this scalable across the whole organization? So it's like completely different like view on what you need to have ready as an infrastructure to be able to execute effectively. So like most of the clients are now focusing on like how can we make the data ready for these AI agents, so like any team can reuse them easily and can get access to them, and they are governed. We have like proper control on what can be used by whom and in what use cases. Now we also have seen like the companies during last 10 years, like everybody was focusing on structured data. So like how do I democratize access to data within the organization? Like, how can I make people like broader audience, not just the data people, like use the data, understand the data, find the data quickly. Like that's what we were doing last 10 years with data catalogs, data governance. Now, as you said, like 85% of the data approximately is unstructured. And now with the AIs, like unstructured is getting like more and more attention because that's where the models shine. Like they can dig through these like vast data sources very efficiently and give you the answers. So like a lot of the focus is now like how do we make the same thing for unstructured data as we did for structured. There are some like additional challenges on top of it, like with unstructured, like when you want to use the data to train the models, like you need to make sure like you strip private information, you might need to strip financial information data out of these documents. You want to ready or make the ready and accessible the data in a way these AI models tends to use them. So like have them ready somewhere in their eggs or somewhere exposed through MCPs and so on. So like that's portion of what our clients are focusing on. Now also what we see as a challenge is like in past, like you relied on knowledge of people. So we had like always these like islands of like knowledge within the organization. So I knew like you are the best guy to tell me financial results of Deloitte. And I
I'm
believed
not.
in you. I believed in you because you are the expert for that area. So with AI agents, you don't have that. Like you have an AI agent, you ask it something, it gives you the answer. Now, like, should I believe? Like, how did it arrive to this like information? Like, what data sources it used? Like, even like internally in the organization, we probably know the situation. Like, I personally looking on like cloud expense reports with how much we spend with AWS, and like there are two different reports that I'm looking on, and then you like figure out, okay, like this one is unofficial report which like my colleague created, this one is the one coming from the finance. So like that's what the customers are basically facing. And with the AI agents, I think like putting this trust in these AI agents, so when they are deciding, they know like which data they should use and they have the metadata to understand actually the data. Like that's where we need to make like leapfrog to have like really effective systems in place. So like it's, you said it in general, like describing the data sets, like letting external brain understand the data without your knowledge is the thing which the clients are trying to solve now. So, and that's what we're trying to help with.
That's an interesting point right there, right? Because, and I wanted to ask you this: if I was a typical data steward at a company using your technology, what is my now current expectation on your platform, leveraging AI, Gen AI, agentic, to be able to understand at large the data in my organization?
Yeah, I think like Ataccama was quite soon on the AI trends. I think we started back in 2016 with like the typical machine learning and AI. So we automate a lot of the things. Like in past, you can imagine in the way that when clients were cataloging data, it was kind of a SharePoint. So somebody went in and documented like, these are the 10 data sources we have. This is what the table means. This is what customer information means. Like this is how we define employees. So you had this like business glossary, everything was manual. Like several like years in past, we focus on like how we can get this done in scale. So you can like observe these systems, document the system in automated fashion. Like what customers expect now from us, like you still needed like some pretty technical skills to be able to do this. So like nice example is like we work a lot with financial institutions. They need to be like BCBS compliant. So there is like whole regulation, like huge document you need to understand. Then the data steward needs to go into data, figure out like to which data I should apply this check, then define the checks, and apply the checks on the data, evaluate the results, and then you can show compliance with this to like regulator or somebody. Sure. Now they're basically expecting like these tools are doing the stuff for them. So like what we've been focusing last couple of years on was, I told you in a like pre-brief, like we had at the very beginning, we had like two teams. So we called it like evolutionary and disruptive stream. So evolutionary was really focusing on like, how can we leverage this general knowledge of LLMs in the product as fast as possible? So we went for things like, instead of writing the data quality rule, which is essentially some business logic written in some expression language, like how can I define that through natural language? Or I have a data set, I want to describe the data set, so I can just ask AI, like look at the data set and give me the description. This is a customer information containing blah, blah, blah. And then in the disruptive team, we were looking on like, how can we reinvent what we are doing? Like, would we not have like the knowledge of how the things were done before? Like, how would we looking on that if we only knew like AI stuff? And essentially we came out with the like agent before the agent was a real thing. So like what we're trying to focus on towards the clients is like, hey, I need to be BCBS compliant, make that happen. And so they don't need to understand and do like all these manual tasks, because like these big corporations and enterprises around the world, like they have thousands of critical data elements they need to watch. Then you need like hundreds of data stewards, like continuously updating, reviewing, and doing these things. So basically what we now do in Ataccama is like automate this whole thing. And ideally, the next stage is basically going to agentic, where I mean that it will not be kind of like reactive way, like, hey, I want to be BCBS compliant, but the other way around. Like the agents looking on like daily work you do and just advising, hey, I found duplicates, like you need to adjust this reference data, you need to adjust these rules because the new data has come in. So basically having this like proactivity in the platform and driving like improvements on this data trust index and how we can make it better.
I love that. What an exciting story, right? So I want to double click a little more on that, because if I'm sitting outside and trying to understand how do I implement agentic, right? I think you brought in two important points here, right? So one is try to make a disruptive team to explore the art of possible, and also an evolutionary team to think about making sure that you understand how you can do the existing things better. Now, if I take that as a practical scenario, can you explain that a little more, given a bit of data trust and using the data trust, if you need to have a disruptive team, what will ensure that your agent, what you're building, can be trusted? I mean, if you can actually take us through that, I think our viewers will be really excited to understand that.
So if I understood well the question, so like imagine you are doing agents and now like if you use Claude or like Snowflake Cortex or something, you can ask it questions. So you can ask it like, what's my RR, like what's the GRR, like any metrics you want, or like create a dashboard with number of outages and uptime of my platform. And it goes into the data and tries to figure out like, how do I create this report? And it's basically looking on some type of metadata. So for example, in Snowflake, you have some basic description of the data asset. So you tell it like, hey, this is table containing this information, like for example, tickets with outages, and it does have these fields. And then basically it takes this data and try to create an answer for you. And it's generative. So it basically tries to figure out like the best answer to the question. But now, can I trust it as a question? Because like these companies, they do have like tons of data sets. So you might have customer information somewhere in the warehouse, like in the silver layer, in the golden layer. You might have like different source table coming from directly from CRM. So it just decides on one of these tables. Now, was it the right one? Like, did it use the right logic or not? Like, that's where we think like these agents will need like MCP kind of an agent. You can ask like, give me the best data set for this specific task I have, and then be able to understand this is really the best data set. So imagine it the way that I'm looking on this, like creating this report, I ask it like what tables I have with my customer information. It gives you like 10 of them. And then an agent can decide like, hey, like this one does have like the best data trust index on it. It was updated yesterday. It's used in hundreds of reports. Like it's used by 10 downstream applications. So it can better decide like this is the data I should be using. And he knows like who is the data steward, does have the description, how is it used. So it can give you like much better results. And then it can also show the users like, hey, and by the way, I have used these sources which are really trusted within the organization, and the data should be fresh. So you don't need to worry, like this should be the good results. So that's how we're trying to augment these AI agent systems through like MCP server exposed by Ataccama, which is giving you like this trust information and the metadata about the data.
That's very helpful. I think that again, it actually makes me feel that it's another important challenge for you, because you own or manage an engineering team, and agentic AI and generative AI is an important part in terms of how do you engineering your products as well. Can you give us a little view in terms of how you are thinking about this to develop your own product?
Yeah.
And how open and welcome people are to these technologies.
Hey, like you always have like these trailblazers, people who like are swimming through uncharted waters. Like I'm one of them, so I always get like super excited about these things. So basically last year I was strongly pushing like usage of the AI in engineering. So we basically did like a lot of things internally in the organization. So we looked for, like you always, when you drive change, you always have these people who jumps on the technology right away and they try to like, show the others like how it can be used. And then the rest is, usually like getting on it's much slower. So like we have this like Trailblazer program, like we're showing what people are doing. They're publishing videos, how they're using different technologies like Lovable for design, or how do I use Cursor to complete my tasks better, or how can I do automated code reviews. And we basically told everybody like, or I was telling everybody, hey, it's time to experiment. Like this is the time where there are no clear winners on the AI side. Like you just need to try these technologies and see how you can use them. And that's what you need to do to stay relevant on the market. Now, obviously, there is a lot of pushback because people try the technology and they say, "Oh, it did like the code was terrible," or like it didn't help me. Like it went 80%, and then I spent more time fixing it afterwards than when I would start from scratch. So you always have these people who are pushing back, and I think it's important to understand like this is going so fast. Like what didn't work yesterday will work tomorrow, and this was like my thinking. Like it's kind of augmentation. Like in the software development life cycle, you have different places where you can plug like specific tools to help you out to do these things better. That's what I was pushing. But like I had like eye-opening moment. Like I think 3 weeks ago, Mike, our CEO, introduced me to a guy who is called Matt Fisher. He's from like Mio Vision company, and he was telling me a story about like, hey, I went over the weekend to a coffee shop and I installed this like tool called AMP from SourceGraph, and I just connected to our source base and I implemented a feature which was on the backlog, and I was like, okay, like sounds good. And then he said like, I met CEO, and the CEO was like, how did you do that? Like, who helped you out with this? And he was like, I did it. And like, how you did it? Like, which engineer? And he was, no, I did it. Like, I did it through AI. So he said, I need to have an access. And then he basically told me like, CEO is now contributing the code. So I was like, yeah, that sounds like kind of like too good to be true. So I said like,
that's very powerful though, right?
it is like, so I was like, I have to try that out. So we had an offsite with my VP engineering or SVPs of engineering. So I have 5 of them basically, and a guy who is leading security and IT.
Before you continue, I just want to pause for a second and make sure that our listeners fully grasp what you just said. The CEO of an organization was contributing to the source code of their product because of the enhancement of AI now on this particular product that has oversight over their source space, right?
Yeah, and he basically he told me like he's the leader in the like functionalities he contributes in the organization now. So he completely changed like how he works. And now like you can imagine there's like complete like game-changing kind of a thing. Like if the world can really work this way, like the whole like software development will change as we know it. So now.
And I interrupted you because you were telling us then you went back and you tried to do a similar thing.
And I tried to do it myself. And I think like Dagi, Roman Piklik already talked on this podcast about this experience. Like all of my guys were like very skeptic except one, Jirka Brunslik, who is driving the AI for me. And so he set up like real environment. Like they did a clone of our repo. Like I installed the whole code base of one of the modules called reference data management on like my laptop. I got the VS Code running, like we plugged in AMP, the other guy was using Cursor, the other one was using something else. And we essentially went to implement something. So like in past, we did dark mode in an application because that was like highly requested functionality, but you always say like, it's a bullshit, like who needs that? Like it doesn't change the business, but people love it. So I tried to do dark mode, like I did it in 1.5 hours, like across the whole application. Like it wasn't easy. Like I told it like, hey, take best practices on the market for data or dark mode implementation, like color palette, and go through the whole base and do it. And he did like one portion of the screen only, like one table. And I was like, hey, like you're missing the menu on the left side, like you don't have background. And like iterated like this. I ended up at the end telling it like, you need to go and change the specific element on the HTML page because that one you haven't covered. And I wasn't able to force it to do it. But 1.5 hours, you basically had it. And it was workable. Like it added the menu item, everything was done. And my colleague took APIs, so we had APIs on the backlog for a year, and it's always like, you know, like we have to figure out like what APIs we need, blah blah blah. And he basically committed like end-to-end APIs in 1.5 hours. He even submitted it like for code review to the team which is developing that product. So they did a code review. Honestly, it wasn't perfect. It was like decent code. Like it did some naive implementation like of pagination in memory, so it probably wouldn't be performant. But you could push it like with some small adjustment, you could push it to the code base. Now, again, the feedback from the engineers would be that, you know, like it's not production ready. But then if you imagine if you would have these like, there are these like agent MD files which you can put in the code base where you tell the agent how it should act on like specific types of requirements. And the better you describe that, the better it is in the implementation. So would we have that? It would probably have done it on the first try. And even with that, like imagine you would send it back like a code review, basically telling it like this is what you messed up in the implementation. It would like 99.9% correct it and done it like that well. So we basically really end up by like developing a couple of features which you can really push from my level. And I'm like, I engineer from heart from like very young age, but not last 15 years.
How many years have you been coding? Or so how many years have you been in this game?
I started really like young, like 9 years. I got like first computer and basic programming. And I had the job from like 17 years old. And then I'm in management role for the last 15 years. So
and look, you guys aren't with us right now, but There's a lot of energy exuberating off of Martin right now. So you're saying, with all the skepticism of your entire 300 people engineering team, you believe this is quite a revolutionary jump in the development lifecycle?
Yeah, I really believe so. Like, are we there yet? Maybe not like 100%. Will we be there in a year time? Like 100% in my opinion. So I tell you a different story. Like, I'm not like CTO per se, like the most technological guy probably out there, but I think like I had my own software company before as a co-founder and CEO. Like my whole life, I struggled with, like not having enough people around me who can realize like my visions, which I have in a head. And now if you imagine you have tools like these, you can probably go and like basically do like this solopreneur kind of a thing. And like, you don't need anybody. Like you can just obviously like do a web page for this product, like do the research, like create.
You can render your own ideas essentially to your team.
So during the offsite, like we also try different things. So there are like different applications, like there are startups popping up each day. So there is like Base 44 done by Solopreneur, which is like coding platform for application. There is Replit. So we are paying like 60K for PagerDuty, which is essentially like very simple application. Like it just pings people during the night when there is outage or something. So you can raise alert and you have like shift. So people are assigned per component to shift and like you just ping somebody. So we used Replit and I basically coded like fully functional PagerDuty with like limited functionality, obviously. But I could have set up like employees, assign people to services, assign services to schedule. And I even got like the SMS notification and calls working. So at 1 a.m. it pinged Dirka Brunsing and woke you up. And I can't tell you like how powerful this is. Like feel like you can do again something with your hands and have the impact as like from the leadership position. It's really game changing because like a lot of my job is basically like setting the vision and like making people follow that vision. Like that's what you do as a leader. And a lot of the times they don't see to your head. So, like you iterate, you try to explain, you spend a lot of time, you need to persuade them this is the right way to go. And then you see the result and you are kind of like, oh, that's not what I was thinking really. And you iterate, it takes ages. So if you imagine that I can go far as this, like I can like vibe code, not like design something, but like really have functional thing or commit it ideally to the code base and then let like the senior engineers to like polish it up and make it workable. It's just complete game changer on like many levels. So like engineering wise, I think many things can change. So like you imagine the typical software development lifecycle, like you have tons of requirements from customers. You have to choose from the backlogs, like this is the 5% of the things we can really implement, like which are the 5 best things we should be doing with highest impacts towards the customers. Then you spend designing like a couple of weeks, few weeks doing research to be sure you do it actually like right way, ideally first time, and then do few iterations on top of it. But the whole thing takes like 6 to 12 weeks, even if you are like agile and you iterate. And now you can probably have like 10 times better throughput through this. Like if you imagine like designer, product person, and engineer sitting in one room and all using the same tool and iterating on code base, they can probably get like functional thing in 2 days. So they are not like drawing spec, then drawing picture, then implementing the picture, but doing the thing right away from the beginning. So like if this will really work this way, which still needs to be tested, like the whole software development lifecycle is going to be like completely different. So
this is exciting. I could listen to you all day.
Because this is redefining the way you develop your software, right? So essentially the collaboration, what you bring in, get the right set of folks within the room. And to all the listeners, especially the executives, if you're not already playing with AI, especially in development, now is the time, because Martin just said that a CEO can actually deploy a production code within 1 hour, you said, or less than an hour. I mean, that's the power of agentic AI. And thank you for sharing that story. It's amazing what you're doing.
Well, what is it? So the one thing that similar CTOs or C-suite leaderships to our listeners would be experiencing is they have a level of capable engineers within their organizations. You've got hundreds. What does this look like? It can't all be smooth sailing, right? I mean, we spoke a little bit about bringing people along that mindset and casting that vision and pulling them along, getting them to see that this is revolutionary in a sense. And no one likes change. I mean, you said you started with assembler and now you're building code with natural language. I mean, can you speak through what are the emotions around this topic maybe?
Can I also extend that question? Because especially product engineers come with a lot of technical background and knowledge. And the very idea that an AI perhaps can actually implement what they are thinking could be again very concerning to them. Like, how do you manage this? Because you have a talented set of team. How do you balance those two? Love to hear that.
Like you always have pushbacks when new technologies are coming in. I'm always saying like when we got like the steam engine, like people were still like, using their horses to plow the fields and everything. And like you can just ignore that the engine is like noisy, it's ugly, it breaks, whatever. Like, but at the end, if the other guy starts like plowing 10 fields in the same time you do one, you probably start figuring out like something is not good. I'm probably gonna die if I don't change. So like some people are the guys who adopt first and they go through like all the like initial hurdles related to adoption of these technologies, and some like follow afterwards. Like that you have inside the organization as well. You always have portion of people who are jumping on the things, and the rest it's kind of like either makes it or doesn't make it, honestly. Like some people will maybe not make it. Like engineer by heart, I think they love to build. They love to build like great products and do it well, ideally on first time. And I think that's where the struggle is coming on, because they've been like learning 20 years like how to build well-built software. And now like something writes it for you, and you always get this feedback like, hey, it's not like ideal, I didn't do it like too well. But then when you like take it from like completely different angle, and you would just think like, would the AI be like super powerful mind, like having like endless capability, like there would be no limits to it? Like, would we even need to build a software? Like that's the question. Like, imagine you have a business, like you as a owner, like I have to submit accounting reports like monthly. I need to have like ERP system. I need to have CRM system. But like these digital native companies, which are happening right now, they might be thinking differently, because you go through this evolution, and like one day you need website, the other day you need like simple registry for customers, the another one you need like notifying people about new products. So you can just like iterate through these like AI things. And would the AI mind would be like super powerful? Like you don't even need that. Like you'll just tell it, or it will know essentially like, hey, you should be submitting accounting. So like give me like your whatever, like what you paid last month, so I can send it to the accounting. So you essentially don't care like how it did it at the end. Like I don't care it created like code or something. I care about the like end game, like the output, the outcome of the thing.
And on this point, I mean, sorry to interrupt you mid sentence, but I want to stick on this point exactly, because you mentioned in a scenario whereby you and your engineer were both working on a similar task, but the way you were prompting was quite different to the way you were engineering. Could you talk me through that? That was a very interesting.
Because I think like engineers, they are like, hey, I have this code, like help me out to write this function, or like help me out to like re-engineer this portion of the code, like make it more of, I don't know, performance efficient or something. Well, like I was really going from like the business requirements. Hey, like my customer is looking to like bulk approve all the like records, or I want to use AI to create reference data table and auto-populate it based on the like publicly available information. That's how I was prompting it. Like Jirka, for example, when he did the API, like he was like much more like thorough. Like he said like, hey, I want to use this authentication method. Hey, this is how I want you to build it. Like, this is like what methods you should use. Like he was like completely doing it differently. Like the end results might be like his code is better, like almost in the same time. So I think like you need this engineering skill. Like you need people who actually understand like how to build the stuff. But again, would the mind be super powerful? You probably don't even need that, because it would probably know better than like these guys. So
is there a mindset change then? Because the way you think about development now, it's not just business value driven, but also how do you better implement through the right prompts and so on and so forth? What's the balance, and how do you think about getting your teams aligned to that vision?
It's complicated question. Like I'm not really the like prompt guy, like saying like I learn how to write proper prompts. I think that will disappear as well at some point of the time. Like you will not care, like I will know how to do it. I think like what's really nice on one of these tools, like the source amp, you can see everybody and their prompts. So basically you can collaborate on what the other guys are doing, and you can see like how they started with the functionality. So can people learn like from each other, like how to do these things best. So I think that's nicely blends like how the engineers are thinking versus product designers are thinking versus PMs are thinking. And I think that will be the key, like for the collaboration. Like a lot of these tools are now like, I start, I vibe code, and that's where it ends. Like in the real world, like you will need multiple people to iterate on the same kind of task and just like adjusting. So that's where I think like most of these tools are coming to now at the moment, like help people like collaborate more efficiently and learn from each other.
If you're open to it, I'd love to get you in front of clients, because the typical CTO I'm talking to at large enterprise, his priorities are just to keep things running and operational. And I don't think there's much time for headspace, for thinking, for playing. And I think what it tends to happen then is the innovation starts to happen bottom up.
Yeah.
There isn't then a lot of top down sponsorship. And you end up in the cycle of just people playing and nothing really gets to make measurable impact in the organization. Where you're saying, guys, I believe in this thing. In a year from now, this is the future. And you're starting to drive this top down cultural change already into your teams and dealing with the real difficult cultural nuances that this brings, which ultimately is going to lead your company into a successful future.
Yeah, I really think you need to be intentional about it. Like, it will not happen on its own, or it will, but too late. And I had a call with like my mentor coach, Sean Dyke, yesterday, and he asked me like, I told him like what we're doing, and it's kind of like going slowly. And I'm like very impatient person by heart, so like I'm not happy when things are not happening.
I was on the bike, but not time for.
And he was like, "Have you tried to bring like external view to this? Like show people other people who are doing it just to open their eyes?" And I was like, "No, dear. Like we're doing everything internally, like sharing the knowledge." So I think it's actually a great idea.
Great
Like, we
idea.
should be doing more. So
I think people can benefit from your story. Honestly, it's
I think no one has cracked what's the right way to move forward. In my humble opinion, it's going to take another 5-6 years for everyone to figure out what's the real art of possible.
Yeah.
But unless you experiment now, try something different. And this is where I love the fact that getting executives actually start leveraging generative AI to develop code or even solve a business value problem, right? So that changed the whole perspective in terms of how the executives actually think about it. You get a top-down sponsorship, and that will help the culture of the organization as well, right? So that's an awesome start, and I think that's something which we should share with probably a lot of
I think
other
this is
customers
like
as well.
really cultural change. Like you need to drive in the organization, just change how people are thinking. I've wrote article like on Monday essentially about like can even CEO ship the functionality to enterprise software.
wow.
Like when I was looking through like if anybody is talking about it, like it's uncharted waters. Like I think like a lot of people are not even thinking about this way. And like even if they are, there is gonna be like many challenges. Like you might completely reinvent like how you do the things. Like how do I manage backlogs? Like how can people contribute? Like you might suddenly have like all three of us contributing the same functionality sitting on the
Sure.
call with a customer. Like how do you manage that like the core code base in the engineering stays like well maintained and people have these like extension points where they can commit easily? Like how do you test? You might have like whatever, like 3,000 lines of code coming to your QA at the moment, and like you will have 300,000 suddenly coming
Yeah,
in. Like, how do you
yeah.
adjust to that? So there is gonna be a lot of things we need to invent or reinvent. But it's exciting, like
That's
a lot
really,
of cool
really
stuff we
exciting.
can
I think,
look
I think
on.
the whole definition of peer programming would change because usually it was only with developers. Now you have all functionality coming together. They can equally contribute if they just understand how to leverage the tool. And then all of them just focused on each other will give you a right outcome pretty quickly, right? So this is something which was not possible today in the past, and now it can change the whole game in terms of how quickly you can get things out.
And you have to try really because like some of the things I honestly got like mind blown. Like Replit, for example, like it implemented the application and then it like spun like web browser and I started to click through it saying like, hey, so first thing I need to do is create employee. Now I need to assign it to it. And it was just like browsing with the mouse. Or like even to this amp, you can give it a screenshot and tell it like, hey, the menu is not like black, like change it, and it can understand the picture. So like the capabilities are just getting like completely different than like code completion, which we used to have. Like just like help me how to write this. It's just like it can understand like it even did like competitor research on these like PagerDuty. So it read the web page and it said like this is the 10 functionalities you should have in, like without me telling it. So it's just like a lot of the stuff you need like expertise of people, understanding of the market. I think like with this like huge knowledge it does have and the search capability, it's just gonna be like incredible different world. And when you ask about this assembler, and sorry I'm unstoppable, like I think it's just changing how you develop because like in assembler like you've been like very low level. Then there was Basic, then there was Pascal, then I started to use Delphi, which probably nobody knows, which was like kind of like
I coded some Delphi.
yeah, like GUI programming, which I still love. It was so cool. You just drop things.
Delphi
Like it was for
VB6.
dummies, like programming. And now it's gonna change to like prompting, but that's how it will look like. It's just like another level of how you develop the software. It will definitely go there. So like, will we need experts? Like we will. it will just create a new opportunities in reality. Like you will need like a bit different skills. You will still need like experts who can like fine tune things which it can't solve itself. Maybe do like the core of the architecture well before you start extending with the AI. So like it's gonna be a bit different than it is now.
What about the future of talent and hiring in this space? Are you going to be looking for slightly different skills in the future? Augmented skills will, CVs won't just be hardcore coding, but the ability to do
I
some.
think like yes, like for sure, like you wanna bring people along on the journey, obviously, but then like when you want to change the ways how it goes, you usually want people who can like drive the change. So you need at least like small amount of people with the mindset you need. And on the AI, I really believe, and it's coming from one of our colleagues who basically told me like you need like super full stack people, which essentially mean you need people who can like understand business, they understand engineering, they know like how to design things. So you will not have like back end, front end. Now you had full stack. You will have like these people who have this overlap. I think you will need this type of skills and people who can think this way. And some people will probably go through the change and adjust. Some people might not. But there will still be like old schools. Like we're still developing in COBOL even now. So like doesn't mean like everything we know will disappear. So
Before we sign out, you've got such a interesting perspective being a digital native product building company. If you were to address your peers, CTOs, CIOs, even CEOs, across enterprise, across a digital product, what message would you give them as encouragement, maybe, or just to try something new or step out, or what in your current state of being, what message would you leave with them today?
I think like a lot of people is talking about the things. Like my learning when I told you like 60 days ago, I wouldn't believe like this is possible. Is like try it yourself. Like go like put the sleeves up and try it. Like I personally gave a challenge because one of like, I don't know, like one of the junior colleagues asked me like, so how do you use the AI? So I said like, I'll try weekly like new technology just by hands, like try it out. So I'm looking on like different like subscriptions, like there is an AI for it, and just trying like what's out there and trying it by hand so I know if it really works or not, because like people are skeptical, then they tend to push back. But when you try it and you see the potential, it might completely change like your mindset, how you're thinking about the future. And I think like learn, unlearn, experiment is the kind of the thing you need to be doing now. Like there are no clear winners, like things work, so things doesn't work, things go 80%, you can figure out the next 20%. I was showing a picture that's actually funny. I should have shown that to the podcast. Like my friend
We can
had,
make it happen.
my friend had a birthday, and I told Gemini, the nano banana model, like, hey, go and like take this guy from this picture, put him on the yacht, and give him a wine, and put me there as well, and make us look like 70 years old guys who are like well off and drinking together. And he put drink on top of my like jacket here, and my hand was in my like in my pocket. I was like, hey, like it's flying in the like air, like can you make it so I hold it? So it did like third arm, which is holding the one, and I still had the other wine cup. So like, is the AI there on everything? No, it's not. Like engineering is a bit different because, and data as well, because that's language. Like it's language model, it's language. Like pictures are different things, videos are different things. So I think like learning, trying, seeing where it goes, it's the thing you need to be doing. And then just like be sticky about some of these things and set expectations to like your people, like what you are expecting out of them in terms of like adoption, and start measuring like what impact it does have. I think like there will be consolidation happening at some point of the time. So now we're trying like all the tools which are there. At some point of the time, there starts to be winner, and you will probably need to consolidate and like make it financial viable. So like that's probably the next stage. Like how do we evaluate like if this really does have an impact and it's helping the people, not slowing them down, but they're really making a big difference. So.
Thank you, Martin. And that brings us to the end of another wonderful episode of Generative Edge. Keep generating responsibly.